Heidi ho there, friends and neighbors. Bobby here today. Hey folks, today we're going to be putting a timing belt and serpentine belt on a 2000 model Ford Ranger pickup truck with a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder in. Okay, it's been a while since I've done one of these on one of these old straight fours. So what I'm going to do, this video is not going to be like a totally step by step. I'm going to tell you a few things I'm going to take loose, and then I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to show you what to do next. And then when we get down to the removal and installation of the timing belt, I'll spend a little bit more time on that. And just to make sure you get your new belt lined up right. Now, first of all, we're going to go ahead and take our upper radiator hose off. We're going to drain a little bit of coolant out of it. We know we're going to take this the serpentine belt and the compressor off of here. We're definitely going to start with that. Another thing, I'm going to go and move the fan shroud out of the way and the fan. If you look down here, there's 4 bolts holding the fan clutch to the water pump. We're going to break them loose, spin that out, go ahead and take our fan and our shroud out of our way, give us a little bit more clearance and room to work in here. So let's get started on that, and then we'll be right back with you. Hey guys, back here today on the timing belt job on a different day. I've actually taken a few days away from this because I wanted to get a water pump for this vehicle as well. But I'm down to getting ready to take the timing belt off, and I'll just kind of backtrack a minute. I ended up taking the radiator out. I had to use a chain wrench to actually get the bolt broke loose on the crankshaft damper. You may need to, my impact wasn't strong enough to do it, so you may need a chain wrench and a breaker bar to do that. This apparatus here that holds the power steering pump in place, you don't have to remove it from the car. You can just take all the bolts out. You should be able to lay it out of the way enough to gain access to everything. AC compressor I went ahead and took off the car. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to kind of mention. Yeah, that's basically it. Radiator, shroud, fan, everything like that taken off the car. Now what I went ahead and done is run this vehicle around on top dead center, and the way actually it come with some marks here. I had actually Googled it on the internet, but it shows you where your lineup marks are for your crank and your camshaft and your countershaft. Okay, and I went ahead, I always like to make my own marks as well. Let's look down here first on the countershaft. You can see that there is an arrow like a diamond shape on the pulley itself, and it lines up with a little diamond on the plastic case. Now I went ahead and put a little white paint dot there as well to where I can see it even better. Down here on the crankshaft, see if we can see that, there is a little slot in the aluminum cover, okay, and it lines up with a dot right beside the keyway on the front of the crank. And I think you should be able to see that. And of course I went ahead and put me a paint mark right there on one of those teeth there where I can see it real good since I'm an old blind man. Up here on the camshaft, same thing. It's actually right down here where you can see it. You can see that there's a triangle shape on the cam gear that lines up with a little triangle on the black cover. And I put paint marks on that, and then I also just come right up on top here where I can look straight down and see I got a paint mark on the valve cover and a paint mark right here on the metal gear. So I like to mark things good, and we're getting ready to remove this belt now. I've already taken they make a special tool for this tensioner here. I'm going to try to get, I don't have the tool, I'm going to try to get by without borrowing one. I take a pry bar, I loosened up the 13mm headed bolt on the tensioner and the I believe it was a 16mm on the spring. I just broke it loose just a little bit to where I could move it with a pry bar, and then I snugged the 13mm back down. I'm going to try to remove the belt, and I bought a new tensioner. I'm going to replace the tensioner, and I'm going to put a water pump on it. So I'll check back with you here in a little bit, and we'll see where we're at then. Okay guys, I just want to show you one more thing in case you decide to do your water pump replacement while you're doing the timing belt. It's not really necessary, but I decided to go ahead and do it while I was in here anyway. Sorry about that. That noise was the old water pump falling off the radiator support to the floor. But anyway, I've got the water pump. There's 3 bolts that hold it to the front of the engine block, and as you see that little plastic tube there that goes into the side of the water pump, it has an O-ring on it to seal as it goes into the water pump, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here's our old water pump. The pipe actually goes into this opening right here, okay? And as you can see, there's 3 bolts that holds that water pump in place. And to get that pipe out, it's kind of hard for me to show you this, but down here on the bottom side of the alternator, okay, you don't have to remove the alternator. You can actually reach in there with a 1/4-inch drive ratchet, and what you're going to remove is these 2 bolts right here. I'm going to show them to you. They got 8mm heads on them, and you'll remove both of them. You can reach in there with a 1/4-inch ratchet and a deep well 5/16 socket or 8mm, and you'll be able to back both of these bolts out to where you can slide that tube back far enough to where you can, sorry about that, to where you can actually slide that tube back far enough to where you can slide your water pump right out. Just want to give you that little bit of information if you decide to do your water pump as well. Okay guys, with water pump installed, we've already got our new timing belt on here, and we have not released the tension yet, but I just wanted to show you that all our marks here are lined up, and we've got, you know, tension on the non-tensioner side of the belt, so we don't have any excessive slack or anything. So we're ready to go ahead and take our 13mm socket down here on our tensioner, and we're just gonna, well, first of all, let me backtrack a minute. We put a brand new tensioner on this engine, okay? And we basically just used a pry bar. They make a special tool for revolving this thing around, but I used a pry bar with just a slight bend on the end of it and pried the spring tension back on the tensioner, and then locked the 13mm headed bolt down. Moved it back, you know, to as far as it would travel backwards. Now we're getting ready to release it, and then I'll talk about setting proper tension after that. So we're going to go ahead and break this loose. You're going to hear it snap here in a minute. It's going to pop that tension back on the belt. There it goes. It just snapped, and we've got tension on the belt now. And what we're going to do is just, I'm going to go ahead, yeah, we got nice tension all the way around. I'm going to snug that bolt back down for a moment, and then I'm going to also snug this one totally down too. This one is like backed off about a half a turn, okay? So I can move the tensioner easily. So I'm going to tighten this down, tighten the 13mm down, and then we're going to rotate the engine 1 revolution around in the direction that the engine turns. Okay guys, with the tensioner snug back down, I got my 1/2-inch drive ratchet down here on the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this engine 1 revolution around, and then we'll double check our tension on our belt, and then if we're good, we'll just start putting this sucker back together. Let me get this on around here. I've got my little paint mark here on top that I have set. Something real easy that I can see. That looks like that's about it right there. So that mark lines up. Wait a minute, I'm 180 out. Hang on, we gotta go one more time. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, not 180 out. I'm looking at the wrong mark. Here's my top mark right here. All right, here's the mark that I made to line myself up with the valve cover, okay? So now we can look right down here, and we can see that my mark on my cam gear is right where it needs to be. We look down here on the balance shaft, it's right where it needs to be. And we look down here on the crankshaft, and let's take a look. See, we're just a smidget off, but I don't think we're a full tooth. Let me rotate this here, make sure this is right. It don't take much. Okay, so now we're dead on right there, and now we're dead on right here. And now, as you can see, we're on our mark right here. There's no way we could be off a full tooth. It's just our marks that took a little bit of slack out. But we got good tension on our belt here. all the way around. And what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and one more time I want to release tension on this tensioner, okay? Can you hold that light right there? I'm going to back the lock nut down just a little bit, okay? And then I'm going to take my other socket, 13 millimeter, and all I'm going to do is break it loose just for a moment to see if the tensioner can allow any more of its natural spring tension back on the belt. As long as that's loose and it can do what it wants to do, if it has to move any further, we'll go ahead and snug it back down. Snug our tensioner back down, and we'll snug our top one there back down. And we are set to go. Our marks line up, our tension is correct on our belt, and we know it's going to run. I tell people this all the time every time I do a timing belt video. If this is no time for guesswork. When you set a timing belt back up and balance shafts and stuff like that, you got to know that it's right. You got to get the information with a diagram or whatever you need, and go ahead and make sure everything is right before you crank an engine. Although this one's not a interference engine, if it was and you was to crank one up and you were off several teeth or something, you could do internal engine damage. So that's why it's just so important to always make your own marks, know that you're putting the belt on exactly like you took it off, and you'll be good to go. Now I'm confident right now that I can go ahead and install everything up, crank this thing up. It's going to run great. Friends, I want to thank you for watching this little video today. I'm not going to take you through the procedure of bolting everything back together and getting the radiator in, but we're getting ready to knock that out. But I hope you found this video helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, tell a friend about us, and we'll see you next time. Take care.